Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a couple of the head coaching candidates that could be on the market come 2025 after the crazy coaching market in 2024. And now it's Hot Take Thursday. A new segment here. I'm not sure how many of these I have in me. I'm not necessarily a hot take person overall, but I got a couple in the chamber, and I think this one will make a couple of college football fans very, very happy. So, the college football lore, especially in my lifetime, there has been tons of different things to talk about, tons of different teams that have come and go, tons of different dynasties, really, throughout my time. USC in the 2000s was the team, and then Alabama for a really long time has been the team, and then Georgia might be taking that mantle possibly. But in 2007, that all went out the window. At least for everything up until the last week of the season, everything was off the walls. There was Missouri making a huge run with Chase Daniel at quarterback. Kansas and Mark Mangino making a huge run. One of my favorite college football coaches of all time. If you don't know him, look up a picture and you'll know why he's one of my favorite coaches of all time. But last year was just too quiet, right? That we had these 8 teams or these 7 teams up top, and everyone, pretty much everyone at least, including myself, was sitting there being like, okay, but it always gets worked out. We always figure out who, the best teams are. We always figure out the 4 teams kind of show themselves of sorts. 2014 is a little bit different of a situation, but in general, it could be relatively clean cut. Who deserves to be in, who doesn't, who earned their way in, whatever. Last year just wasn't that. We had, I think, going into Selection Saturday, we literally 6 teams that could get off. Now, Michigan and Washington were in. We knew that. But between Texas, Alabama, FSU, and even Georgia, I think there was a genuine conversation had in that room of any of those teams getting in. And obviously the path for Georgia was a little bit slimmer than some of the other teams, but there were so many things that could happen to avoid all of the craziness that went on. Say Bama loses to Auburn, right? I mean, 4-31. Say Jalen Milroe puts a little bit too much on that throw and it goes off Isaiah's fingers. Then they go to Atlanta. If he did, not waiting for a toss, Georgia wins. If Georgia wins, then maybe they'll play off with all the confidence in the world, and they're the 1 seed, and Michigan's the 2, and Washington's the 3. And then, in my mind, at least, I think for 4, because the win that Alabama got the last weekend of the season was huge for Texas, because Texas now had a win over the SEC champion. They now had a win over someone that had a win over Georgia. So, although not huge fan of transitive wins, that was still part of the conversation, right? So, a lot of the craziness could have been avoided. It just was. There was never that the other foot on this craziness around the sport. And all that culminated in the wildest last playoff slide that we had, and Florida State being left out. And a lot of stuff has happened since then because of that. But going into this next season, I think going into the last even go back like a decade, everyone had a pretty good idea of who that team was going into the season. Now, those teams didn't always win the title, but for a long time, Bama coming into the season, you felt like was the best team. There was a short period where Clemson, you felt like was the best team coming in. Then, Georgia for the past couple of years. There's not that this year. Now, there are 4 teams up top that I think kind of are, at least have a slight edge over everyone else in Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. But between those 4 teams, I genuinely think there's an argument to be made to rank them any which way you really want to. Now, Oregon is a little bit of a sketchier situation. Texas has some stuff. The reality is, all 4 of those teams are right in the mix to be the best team in the country, or to be one of the best teams in the country. And then right after that, you have Ole Miss, Alabama, Penn State, Michigan, Oklahoma, LSU, Notre Dame. The list goes on and on. And with this 12-team playoff, all of those teams can be in. Obviously, there's going to be a Group of 5 team in. There's going to be some different wrinkles to that. But the reality is, there's going to be more opportunity for more teams, right? With a 12-team playoff, more people get in on the dance, and then you just see what happens, right? So a team like, let's say, Arizona, who returns the quarterback, returns one of the best receivers in the country, does have a new coaching staff, but I really do like the coaching staff, is going to be a good team in the Big 12. If they win their conference, they will most likely be a part of those 4 teams up top, right? If you get that bye and then you match up against, let's say, Georgia, let's say the preseason holds and Georgia wins the SEC and is the number 1 team at the end, then you just got to win one game. And obviously, that game is going to be very tough for Arizona, but the reality is with a quarterback like Noah Fafita, a lot of stuff is possible. So, all this to say, there's no accounting for what the 12-team playoff will bring this next season. There's no accounting for how teams will react, not only in the playoff, but in the regular season, right? For the last decade, really, we've had a number of games in week 11, 12, and 13 where, let's say, one team is 5-3 and one team is 6 or 2-7 or whatever. I genuinely think there are positions that certain people could be in where not only is the team with 3 losses that just needs that 9th win to possibly go and fight, but also they could be playing a 3-19. I think that team is going to fight harder in those games because everyone wants to be a spoiler. In this new era of the playoff and this new era of college football in general, all of these smaller teams, all of these teams that kind of left by the wayside when talking about conference realignment, the Boston Colleges, the Vanderbilts, the Georgia Techs, whoever you want to say, there's so many people that kind of swept under the rug in all of this. And I think when it comes time for maybe one of their rivals to punch a ticket to the playoff, they're going to show up with their hair on fire on that Saturday. So I just think this will create for every single week, there will be a pressure on these guys to not drop a game, because obviously you have the ability to drop a game now, but you know that the second you do, you're moving on the list, right? And if we have a situation like we did last year, there could be tons of people right in that group that keep a very, very good team out that maybe even has 2 losses. There's a real reality where we have 12 teams that have 0 to 2 losses, and a team like LSU, who is probably could end up being a top 12 team in the country, even going 9-3, would be left out because there's not, there's so much stuff happening up top. So all of this to say, 2024 has opened so many different doors around college football. I think there are so many people between players, coaches, administrators, presidents that are mad, that are very upset with the current state of things. And if those people get a shot at the big guys that they, picture as the people creating this problem for them in teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to take their shot. So teams like Arizona, teams like Florida State in the ACC, if they get stuck there, NC State in the ACC is a dark horse team that people should be keeping their eye out on. There's so many teams that have so much to fight for in this, not only on the field, not only because of football reasons, but because of everything that's happening around the sport. So although all the stuff happening around the sport I don't necessarily love. I don't love all the changes. I don't love conference realignment. I don't love a lot of this stuff that's going on. One thing that I do think it's going to bring out, at least in 2024, now all of this is up in the air after that because things change very quickly, but in 2024, I know for a fact every single team is walking in to, at least in those Power 4 conferences, and even in the Group of 5, are coming into the season saying, we can win a national title. Now, there are teams that are kind of lying to themselves when they say that, I won't lie to you, but the reality is, get yourself into the dance and then just play really good football. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but there's so many different variables in this. There's so many different teams that have their shot to make a mark on their school's history and college football history and be a part of something incredible in the first year of the 12-team playoff, that all of this stuff is going to factor in. That all all of the outside noise and the teams moving places. And also, with the teams moving places, how do they adapt to the new conferences? How does Oregon and Washington, UCLA and USC, how do they adapt to the Big Ten physicality? How does Texas and OU adapt to the absolute grind that is an SEC schedule? How do, Colorado and Utah adapt to the style of play in the Big 12? All of this stuff is going to lead to upsets. So upsets are going to happen where you don't see them happening this year because of all of these different factors around the sport that might not be great, but at least in 2024, I really do think it's going to make for a off-the-wall season. Now, I can't necessarily promise we will be seeing Cinderella stories like Kansas up at the top of the poll in November or anything like that. But what I can say is there will be tons of teams that will walk into their training camp and say, let's go win a title. Let's go get into the playoff and then play really good football. And at this point, just give yourself a shot, because there's so many teams out there that came into the season knowing pretty much that they didn't have a shot to get in. Most Group of 5 teams knew they were not getting into the playoff. Now, Cincinnati was able to pull it off, but when you look back at that season, it's very clear why, because there was a big old opening waiting for someone to do it, and it felt like that Cincinnati had to be the team at the end of the day. So all of these teams are not coming in thinking, not only can we get in, we are going to get in if we execute and win our conference. So if we can do that, then the sky's the limit. So it's a very interesting year, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason. But I think the second the football starts, all of that is going to go away. All of the outside stuff, at least in the player's mind, is going to go away. And they're just going to see a chance to win a title. And there's going to be so many teams that see that, and there's going to be so many teams that want that. And I just cannot wait for this season, because I genuinely do believe it will be the craziest since 2007. I can't promise it'll be crazier or as crazy as 2007, because Lord, was that crazy. But I do think 2024 has some really incredible things in store for us on the football field, while it hasn't had some great things in store for us off the football field. So that will do it, actually, for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support does mean a lot to us. Please remember to subscribe and leave a positive review. It really does help us out a lot. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social media pages to get constant updates on every sport. If you're a every sport type of fan like myself, and you want to know about basketball, you want to know about what's going on in women's college basketball with Caitlin Clark, there's so many different things going on in the world of sports, and we have it covered wall to wall on this network. So definitely follow all those pages, follow all the YouTube pages and everything here. But that will do it for this edition, and thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. No.